This videotape recorder will record both picture. From the station, the program goes to a transmitter.
Aloha and welcome. Everyone knows that Vietnam is a country in Asia. But where do the Vietnamese come from? From which branch of the human racial tree are they descended? And what were the totemic symbols of the ancient Vietnamese tribes? These issues and more are some that we will examine here in Streaming from Saigon. The only broadcast program in digital streaming media on the World Wide Web dedicated to an examination of historical scholarship from Vietnam in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s. And we start now. In the early 1960s, Mr. Hoàng Vân Nội published an article on the origins of the Vietnamese, and many years later, in 1974, he published his ideas in book form in a book called Nguồn gốc dân tộc Vietnam, The Origins of the Vietnamese People. According to Mr. Hoàng Vân Nội, at the time, in the early 1960s, there were three main theories for the origins of the Vietnamese. The first was that the Vietnamese were Indonesians who had been pushed into the area of the Indo-Chinese peninsula by Aryans in India. There were three main branches of these Indonesians. One went southward to become the Malays and the peoples of the Indonesian islands. A second branch headed into the area of mainland Southeast Asia and became the Cambodians and the Khmer, while the third branch mixed with Mongolians to become the Vietnamese in the Red River Delta. That was one theory. A second theory, according to Mr. Hoàng Vân Nội, was that the Vietnamese had descended from Tibet into the area of the Red River Delta. The third theory was that the Vietnamese had originated in an area probably in what is today the central parts of what is today China, but then the kingdom of Chu was formed there, and the ancestors of the Vietnamese were pushed southward into the Red River Delta. Mr. Hoàng Vân Nội, in his book, comes up with yet another theory that combines some of these. He argues that the Viet were a kind of distinct line in a larger race that, yes, did include the people in the kingdom of Chu, but they were still different from them. He argues that this line, that the racial line that the Vietnamese were part of, descended into the area of Sichuan in what is today China, and then one branch of this line went southward and became the Thai, while a second branch headed eastward down the Yangtze River and then spread northward into the area of what is today the Yellow River Valley. Eventually, over time, though, they gradually spread southward, and when the kingdom of Chu collapsed, some members of this Viet line and some members of the Chu royal family together moved into the Red River Delta and created the kingdom of Văn Lang, the homeland of the modern Vietnamese. This is a very interesting theory, and this and all of the others deserve our attention, but of course our time is limited and we will have to end it here. You have been watching Streaming from Saigon, the only broadcast program in digital streaming media on the World Wide Web that is dedicated entirely and solely to an examination of Vietnamese historical scholarship from the 1950s, the 1960s, and the 1970s. Aloha, ahui ho, goodbye, until we meet again. Streaming from Saigon.